Hello everyone, this is my week 5 video for evacuation efforts during disaster. Some important things we covered this week, topics and concepts that we learned from the myths and realities of a household disaster response. We learned while disaster myths often paint the people affected by disasters in a weak light, generally, people respond strong and self-sufficient during the recovery process. Given their limited understanding of the situation, disaster victims tend to act in their best interest, not acting in hysteria or shock. Something I found interesting in that article was the crime rates usually drop during a post-disaster situation, which is usually not how it's portrayed by the media. Just a quick aside, I remember there's a video clip that went viral last week or the week before of a news reporter chasing around people who were looting out a Dollar General in South Carolina after the hurricane hit. She was chasing them around, and I just thought that was a really ballsy move of her. But anyway, also this week we learned about disaster shock, and that's a myth that people are so emotionally damaged after disaster that they can't help themselves. We learned about panic, which is a myth that people just panic before, during, and after a disaster and can't really get themselves together to help recover. We learned about socially integrative responses. While it's believed people just wait for emergency services post-disaster, it's actually been found that people search out emergency services when they really need it, and if they can, people attempt to help instead of cause harm or make the situation worse. Some misconceptions and erroneous assumptions that affect disaster response: population segments, warnings, personal risk assessment and response, evacuation trip generation, departure timing, destination route choice, medical transport, shelter use, and emergency response role. During the times of a disaster, people generally do not have all the information available, and if they do, it could possibly be incorrect. People experience fear during disaster times, not panic or shock. People will take action no matter what. If they're not provided with the correct information or any information, they will most likely take protective measures. And the level of compliance during a disaster is based on many factors, and compliance will eventually happen, but it doesn't really happen immediately. From the wildfires in SoCal article, I picked out with the wildfires in California, evacuation should be taken very seriously and not as something to drag your feet on. In that article, there were a few people who went back to their houses while the fire was I don't know how far it was, but I don't know if I'd make that move. It also seems ballsy. Um, and then I found a quote towards the bottom of that article very interesting. The government really doesn't have authority over privately run services to ensure the redundancy and resiliency is put in place, and that was from California's Office of Emergency Services Director. The privately run services he was talking about was like telecommunications and how dangerous it can be when that goes down. And this is going to tie into the question that I'll get to in a few seconds. The losing everything video, watching David Hoffman talk about how he lost everything in a fire was really touching. It was interesting to see someone's outlook so shortly after experiencing a disaster and how positive he remained. I'd be pretty sad if all my stuff burnt down, especially all those films and all those scripts that he had written out. All of those burned down. Many of the things he mentioned, he was the only person to have a copy of. So that'd be pretty devastating to lose all of that. Things I didn't understand this week. I think I got everything pretty well. Um, yeah, I don't have anything for that one. But the question for the class would be, what would be a possible reproductive improvisation, which is from the previous last week's chapter. We learned about improvisations. Um, what would be a possible reproductive improvisation would you take during a wildfire to make sure communication remained reliable between emergency services and the population? Um, I guess I don't really have a good answer for that, but I'd like to see if the class has anything that they could possibly come up with. Um, Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great week.